Before we chat too much England, can we just praise Scotland and talk about what Scotland did well? What were you most impressed by out of their performance?
I think given what we know about their back line, it wasn't necessarily surprising that they worked that first try for Van der Merwe, and then the second two for him also were sort of more just seeing space, playing to space really quickly off transition, off one of a million turnovers that England coughed up in the first instance for try number two, and then secondly off that Cameron Redpath break, Finn Russell, just an absolute tormentor of England seeing space. I actually think the balance of their back five impressed me the most. Grant Gilchrist, Scott Cummins, really good, really dovetailed really nicely in different ways, two different locks. Grant Gilchrist was a real hefty nuisance around the breakdown, a lot of counter-wrecking, really cleverly timed as well. So really shunting into those masses of bodies just as maybe Danny Care was going to pass or kick, making life really tough for Danny Care and really slowing down. And it was really interesting. I've written it in a piece, a kind of wrap on Scotland's performance. Steve Tandy and Maro Itoje had a bit of a hug and a chat at the end of the game, and I remember Maro Itoje, and it being slightly surprising. Here, Maro Itoje says Steve Tandy, working with him on 2021 Lions was awesome. I learned so much. He's such a sort of visionary about coaching defence, and it at times I know they conceded 21 points, but I think the defense and the intelligence and the decision making around that was really impressive in that back row, and maybe above all Jack Dempsey. That's what kind of really caught me.
Yeah, Dempsey was outstanding, wasn't he? I mean, Charles, we can't not talk about Duan and his hat trick, the first hat trick in the championship for Scotland against England. Where does he sort of sit in the pecking order of Test wings for you at the moment?
At the minute, he's very, very high. I think higher than his stock has risen since the World Cup, and a few of the guys have probably dropped down the pecking order a little bit, and he's very, very high. I mean, just the way that he took some of those tries was just outstanding. And but I mean, just in terms of the bigger picture, the finishing was just sublime. But I mean, England, and I know we're going to come on to them, but they were stung by him last year, and really it's deja vu almost, because one of the tries came from that fabulous scrum set piece move that Charlie's just spoken about, but two others really came from. Well, there was one majestic Finn Russell cross kick, but it came from a sloppy line break where England let Cam Redpath in behind, and then they were chasing shadows. And another one came from an England drop pass. Furbank sort of headbutted the ball miles forward, and Van der Merwe's gone. And really, after such a positive start, England were lost. At the start of that second half, there was a really good defensive stand from England where they kept them out after many phases. I think it was Sam Underhill who won a holding on penalty near the line. I might be wrong. And that felt like a big moment. You felt there if Scotland had scored, then they would go on to win. England kept them out, and then a minute later, 30 seconds later, they're scoring anyway with sort of relative ease, admittedly with a bit of world-class fly half play from Finn Russell. But Van der Merwe is, I think we described him at the Telegraph last year as Duhan the Destroyer after the Calcutta Cup win at Twickenham. Well, I don't think there's a noun or an adjective that goes above that. He was just the Destroyer again, Mark II.
Are we officially calling that George Furbank era a Falcon? Because that would excite me a lot if that's the case. Is that the official verdict?
Yeah, I think so. It went miles, didn't it? It was real, but there was that second 20 minutes afterwards was the one that the players were going, yeah, geez, don't really know what happened, the England players. But there was some that were just even more basic than that, like sort of first phase, trying to work just basic inside balls and just them going down. And actually, it had been the weirdest thing is it had been coming against Wales. So you're like, what are they? They would have looked at the Wales game and gone, our handling on a nice day at Twickenham, fairly dry conditions was poor. Let's get better at that. Was really nice conditions at Murrayfield. I have to say, Scotland played their part at that start as well. They had a bit of they were they were a bit fumbly. Carl Steyn came in and pick and go around the edge, dropped it. Duhan van der Merwe's first touch was actually, he got stripped by George Ford, I think. But yeah, so things got a bit better for him. But no, it was just alarmingly poor. The mistake in the lead up to Van der Merwe's second was really interesting, because that was just it sounds like an excuse when you're talking about backline changes. Cohesion goes, and therefore it's more difficult. If you watch Slade and Furbank occupy the same space, they both come round in that sort of pocket behind Ford, getting each other's way. That's why Furbank's unsighted and why it hits him in the bonds. But it looks village when it happens. It really looks like a kind of just like what England looked like, what they are at times, which is a side who struggled to keep combinations together and build cohesion. And Scotland look totally opposite. They look like a settled side that have pushed through this World Cup cycle onto the next one. You don't even talk about World Cup cycles when you talk about the Scotland side, because they've been settled for longer than that. So that's the difference there. And it was fairly jarring.
In a strange way, it was almost a good reflection of just where England are, isn't it? Because they'd had the wins over Italy and Wales, and we kind of jokingly talked about it at the end of the last podcast, didn't we? Where we said, well, listen, if they win at Murrayfield, then all of a sudden they're 3 from 3, and you know, people start to raise their eyebrows. I think I watched the game back this morning on my flight back. The catalogue of individual errors that you've touched on already, Charlie, is quite extraordinary. You can understand it a bit more, I guess, in the second half when they're sort of chasing the game and the scoreboard is getting away from them a bit and they're trying to force things. But there's still moments such as Itoje choke tackle, or when Ewan Ashman comes in for a rip on someone, or the Ben Spencer grubber into someone's ankles, which then turns into an Andy Christie penalty turnover, like where you're just kind of, I think you lose a bit of goodwill and patience there if you're a supporter, because you're expecting more from a group of clearly quite talented players. I mean, Charles, what's a positive out of this for England? What can they take from it? It's quite hard because the individual errors were so bad. It's quite hard to pick out many things, I guess.
Well, I think what they can take from it is certainly that some of those individual errors are quite uncharacteristic. You mean, you look at George Ford passing inaccurately. He's grown into one of England's, if not Europe's, one of leading passing fly halves, and him passing inaccurately is you can't mitigate for that. Maro Itoje rarely has a bad game for England, and he wasn't at his best yesterday. As you've mentioned, he was choke tackled at the end. The uncharacteristic errors. Ollie Lawrence, how many times has he thrown a pass into touch for Bath this season? When trying to locate a teammate, I haven't seen it. If it has happened, then fair enough. But so that's certainly a positive. It's straw clutching a bit, but the fact that the errors were on such an individual level, and collectively England did at times look better. You look at some of the first phase stuff, and certainly that opening try from Furbank. At times England did look better, and their phase defence, I suppose, again wasn't. I know they conceded 3 tries, but it didn't come from sustained Scottish pressure. And the set piece was good. Dan Cole had a good game, didn't he? Genge was decent, and they're building a good sort of quartet of props there. I think there are positives to take, certainly, but I think we are talking about England in just a more negative and pessimistic tone than potentially we were last week, where we were sort of saying that if they went to Murrayfield and won, then that's 3 from 3. You're sort of guaranteed third, maybe second with the result today. And suddenly your championship's looking completely different. But they were 10-0 up after England were 10-0 up after 16 minutes and looked the better side, really, for the opening 16 minutes. And it almost looked as if there was only one team who was going to win that game. And then they conceded 27 points to 6 in the ensuing half an hour or whatever it was, and it was gone. And then by the end, I mean, we've chatted a bit about this already privately, but I just couldn't believe how pedestrian and ponderous they were towards the latter stages of that game when they were chasing it needing 2 scores to win. I wonder if the Finn Smith missed conversion meant that they thought that they couldn't win. Not to blame him at all, but obviously that would have got them within 7. And I wonder if they felt that they couldn't win, that there just wasn't enough time, and that they were playing for a losing bonus point. Because it's all well and good box kicking up the field and having to gain territory and sticking to that sort of strategy, but at some point you might have to throw a bit of caution to the wind, because time was running out. They didn't have the time to kick and risk losing possession. They needed to play, and they didn't seem to even comprehend that or acknowledge that, or even maybe they don't have it. Maybe they don't feel like they've got it in their locker. But when they were chasing the game in those last 10 minutes, I think from about the 73rd minute onwards, it felt as though England thought they were going to lose. And even when they were getting penalties, there was not a lot of urgency to kick to the corner. I know it's clutching at straws a bit, but you were just sort of there watching it, going, why are you not all moving a little bit quicker, given that time is running out? And it felt like you had a bit of momentum when Emmanuel Faye-Waboso came on and scored that great try. It felt like they were building something. They might not have gone and won, but it felt like that there was a spark there, and it fizzled out.
I thought that I've written about Faye-Waboso. I think he's got to start in at least one of the next 2 games. I think George Martin offered them a bit off the bench. But it's bizarre. I've been trying to sort of get my head around it ever since it happened this game, because there's so much, as ever, so much content in a test match, right? And actually what England will say is that with the box kicking, and why they would have stuck to it at the end, is because it was presenting them with opportunities, because Freeman and Daly to a lesser extent, and then Faye-Waboso when he came on, were getting up, contesting, and that was an area that they're putting pressure on Scotland in. But there are a couple of things wrong with it. One is that, do they have the pace and the alertness and the skills to then strike off those loose balls that they're winning back? I don't think so. I don't think they really have since Johnny May was in his pomp, when sort of around 2017, 2020, they were really good at striking and on sort of off turnover and off those in those kick battles. I think they will aim to get back towards that. And then the second thing is just when it is inaccurate and a chase isn't well coordinated, it looks really bad and sucks energy out, because it is just almost like a free hit. It's almost just giving the ball back very easily. So there was a bit of that going on, but that's what I mean about with the kick battle going well, scrummaging being sort of fine, and then with the phase defence, okay. They conceded 3 tries, sort of lightning bolts is the sort of the trendy term, isn't it? With all of that going wrong, and then you add in all of that going sort of okay, and then you add in the handling errors, it's still quite hard to judge England. The kind of I was looking forward to the game, because I really felt like we would really learn a lot either way. It would be like it would be a step forward if they won, and I believe it would have been one of the best, probably maybe just behind that Argentina win in the World Cup. I think over the next 2 weeks we'll really see whether they're treading water and even going backwards, or there is meaningful progress there.